It is week 4, guys, and it is officially all systems down. We had massive injuries to huge names that we had a complete rankings reshuffle, and I'll be going through the top 30 wide receivers for week 4 fantasy football. And I'm already doing everything I can to get us ready for week 4, so please go down there and drop a like on this video and subscribe to the channel to show your support. Now, get into our first tier right here. We've got Puka Nacua at number 1 and Nico Collins at number 2. So Puka Nacua goes back home to take on the Indianapolis Colts this week. And listen, Puka Nacua has just been so good in fantasy. I've been saying this for weeks now. This has the looks and the making of a true league-winning wide receiver in fantasy football. And of course, the Rams are not secret to that type of concept right there when they made Cooper Kupp a league winner back in 2021. We're seeing that all over again for Puka. Yes, Davante Adams is involved, but Puka is the true number 1 who, regardless of how involved Adams is, he will continue to be a tremendous fantasy asset moving forward. And I don't see that changing in any matchup. Now, number 2 with Nico Collins versus Tennessee finally comes back to life, right? It looked like we were kind of getting worried there for a minute with Nico Collins, and I kept telling everybody, hang tight. Nico Collins is not only a dominant wide receiver, but he's their best playmaker in Houston by far. And yes, this team is not good. This team is not good. Like, it's not just an offensive line problem. CJ Stroud bears responsibility, and the play calling is not good. But when in doubt, the ball goes to Nico Collins. And in week 2, it didn't work out. In week 3, it did. Versus Tennessee this week, I don't care if L'Jarius Sneed is there or not. Nico Collins is just that dominant of a player, and I expect him to continue to be that in fantasy moving forward. And at number 3, to round out the first tier, it's Amon-Ra St. Brown versus the Cleveland Browns. Now, in theory, this matchup should go to Detroit very easily. They're going back home, and they're playing the Browns, who themselves are coming off an emotional victory. But if last week proved anything to us, it's that anything can happen on any given Sunday in football. I had the Browns getting absolutely freaking smoked by the Packers, and that did not happen in the slightest. So this could be way more of a competitive game than we think it is. And Amon-Ra St. Brown every week, even if J-Mo is involved, he's just their wide receiver 1 end of story. You can just flat out count on this guy getting about 10 targets in any game script, so I'm going to put him at number 3 for now. Now, dropping down to our next tier, we've got Jackson Smith-Njigba at number 4, and Emeka Egbuka is at number 5. So with Jackson Smith-Njigba, this guy is going to Arizona on Thursday night to play the Cardinals. Now, here's the thing that I've come to realize about Thursday night games is a lot of defenses aren't good on Thursday night. Coming off a short week, it shouldn't be a foreign concept, but it just kind of dawned on me for some reason that these defenses on Thursday night typically aren't that great unless you're the Green Bay Packers. The Cardinals defense I don't see on that type of level right there, and Jackson Smith-Njigba is just flat out dominant, guys. I mean, he had a flu game last week, and he still put up over 100 yards receiving, basically. This guy is fantastic. He is their wide receiver 1. He is their everything in the receiving corps, and he opens it up for everybody else. So even if he has the flu again in this game, I've still got him inside my top 5. And Emeka Egbuka, there is no choice but to put him at the top 5 at this point. He himself is dealing with injury right now. That is very worth noting right here. But Mike Evans is probably going to miss time with a hamstring injury. This has become a recurring theme for Mike Evans over the years, and at 30-plus years old, it's not getting any better. So I don't see him coming back to play the Philadelphia Eagles at home this week. But Emeka Egbuka, listen, it's weird because most rookies don't enter this territory, but with the quarterback, and just as good as he has looked, even when he was injured in this previous game, he at this point, I don't care what matchup is. It's bizarre, but I am at that point with Emeka Egbuka. So even if the guy is hobbled, I guess, like he was on a pitch count last week because they needed him so desperately, he basically played the majority of the snaps. But Emeka Egbuka, to me, is a must-start guy, and at this point, it's top 5 right now. Rome Odunze is at 6, and A.J. Brown is at 7. And Rome Odunze, look, this past week was not his best week. Like the Chicago Bears, they spread the ball around. Now, this is typically what I've always thought Caleb Williams would do in Chicago's offense, is spread the ball out. I've always said that's what he is as a quarterback. And that was the reason I didn't like DJ Moore a bunch. But the reality is, Rome still is his number 1. He gets in the end zone. He gets a lot of downfield targets. So at the Las Vegas Raiders this week, a team that just gave up 40-plus points to a backup quarterback, I see the Chicago Bears rolling into this weekend with a lot of confidence offensively and Caleb Williams having another good game and Rome Odunze being a huge byproduct of that. Now, A.J. Brown at number 7 here at the Tampa Bay Bucks. Listen, came out of nowhere. I had a lot of people ask me, should I bench A.J. Brown? And in certain situations, unfortunately, I tell people to do so. Listen, I'm not doubting A.J. Brown's talent. I never did. I know this guy's a great talent, and I'm not trying to backtrack here because I did tell a lot of people to sit him because of the usage in this offense. And he looked happy to me on Sunday as he was ripping apart the Los Angeles Rams defense. Now he gets to go to Tampa to take on another softer secondary, and my hope for this is this. They just realized that they have A.J. Brown there. And I think they forgot over the past several weeks. So I think that they'll pick up off of this win that they just picked up against the Los Angeles Rams and say to themselves, yes, A.J. Brown still needs to be a central piece in our game plan moving forward. That is what I'm relying on here at 7. Because, again, I don't really have much choice because a lot of our top guys, they're out now. Now, Zay Flowers is at number 8 to round out this tier. And listen, I'm filming this after the Baltimore Ravens and the Detroit game. Now, you would think if you watched that game, it was typical Zay Flowers. He disappears in a big game, by the way, where they should have been throwing the ball a ton to Zay Flowers if he was a true number 1. So I thought about moving him down after that game. But listen, I just can't do it because Zay Flowers, I still believe in the breakout here. And this is a guy that has not loved Zay Flowers over the years. I still believe in it this year. It's against the Kansas City Chiefs this week. It's a must-win situation for them. I do believe that Zay Flowers is still a really good player and a really good asset for this team. There's just no way Mark Andrews can continue that type of play on a weekly basis. And Zay Flowers definitely is going to be a guy they'll manufacture more touches for next week. So again, him and A.J. Brown, they're kind of big leaps, I guess you could say. But I would say this, I think the offensive game plan will shift back towards Zay Flowers, just like I think for A.J. Brown in week 4. Now, dropping down to our next tier, I've got Courtland Sutton at number 9, and Davante Adams is at number 10. So with Courtland Sutton, I was right about this one. I called this guy a must-start last week because of his strong history versus the Los Angeles Chargers, and I was very right. Turns out it's not Troy Franklin that's the number 1 in this offense. It's Courtland freaking Sutton. Now, this matchup, in theory, is fantastic as well versus Cincinnati Bengals, and I do think that they will win this matchup. And listen, anytime Denver is rolling offensively, Sutton can always get a touchdown. But I will say this, Sutton is not in as great of a position this week because I don't think it's as competitive as the game. So if he doesn't get the points early, you might not hit as big on this one. But given the fact that this guy is the clear number 1 receiver in this Denver offense, which is really good in my opinion still, I do still think that he has to be inside the top 10. Now, Davante Adams, I think that he is the best wide receiver 2 in fantasy football on any given team. I think it is him. Listen, Davante Adams versus the Indianapolis Colts, I don't care again if Puka Nacua goes off for 150 total yards. It doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is that this offense with Matt Stafford gets the job done in the air. Davante Adams is at the red zone being used quite a bit, and the guy is getting targets over the middle of the field as well. Now, Matt Stafford was a little off in that Philadelphia game, particularly late, but I will say that Davante Adams' involvement in this offense still has me really encouraged by him. And I'm going to continue to have him ranked really well in fantasy rankings. Number 11 is Justin Jefferson, and I've got Drake London at 12 as well. Listen, these two guys, they're clear underperformers right now. But here's what I'll say with Justin Jefferson in particular. He's going overseas to play the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's an early game on Sunday. By the way, make sure your lineups are very well set before your Sunday morning games because by the time you're up, they will be playing this game. I think Justin Jefferson, though, is a solid start this week. Listen, he did better in some ways with Carson Wentz this past week, and it looks like Wentz will be playing again for the Minnesota Vikings. That's best case scenario. And I do think Pittsburgh's defense, listen, I was wrong about them last week from a fantasy perspective, but they are still giving up lots through the air. And additionally, their secondary is really banged up. So I don't think that there's a way where Justin Jefferson is a terrible play this week unless they completely move away from him in targets, which we all know just will not happen. And Drake London at number 12. Listen, that game against the Panthers was one of the saddest things. I got to tell you, I watched that game. It was one of the saddest things I've ever seen. I mean, Michael Penix, he was sweating so badly. I thought he just got out of the swimming pool, to be honest with you, because this guy was so atrocious in this matchup, and Drake London is really suffering from it right now. Like, there is targets there, and they were there last week. It's a Justin Jefferson situation. So I want to buy in, and I want to say that just because of target share, these guys are up here at this range. But I will say this. These two rankings, much like AJ and Zay Flowers in a tier above, are very fluid because of the downsides that they have presented this year. But against Washington, I do want in on that matchup. Xavier Worthy is at 13, and George Pickens is at 14 to round out this tier. Now, Xavier Worthy, we are projecting that he plays. Apparently, he had a decent shot to go on the Sunday night game versus the Giants. I don't know if they factored in the fact that they thought they would win it very easily into not playing him, but I do think Worthy comes back in a really pivotal point for the Chiefs season against the Baltimore Ravens, where they really need to win this game. And I do think that if you just watch the Chiefs offense, like, there's no way Worthy isn't good for fantasy football, because they will force feed him anything. If this guy is healthy enough to play, they're going to say, you're healthy enough to get 10 plus opportunities. And I'm not joking when I say that. I think Worthy could be underranked here because they will force feed this guy the ball a ton in this matchup if he is playing. George Pickens at 14 to round out this tier versus the Green Bay Packers. The guy's the number one wide receiver right now. And that's just the bottom line. He is the number one because CeeDee Lamb is going to miss at least this game versus the Green Bay Packers on Sunday night. But George Pickens, realistically, if you give this guy 10 targets in a game, he can go nuclear. And I will say that his ranking might be a little too low because the Packers defense, while it is really good, and that's what I'm factoring into the lower ranking, George Pickens is on an offense that if they force feed him the ball because of the lack of depth behind him at wide receiver, it could be a nuclear day. So he could be a big hit this week, but I've got him at a very respectable 14 for now. And if you're looking to get a full team breakdown from me, when you go to fsroundup.com and sign up as a premium subscriber, I will break down your entire team for you, including trade ideas, waiver wire ideas, anything to make your team better after your 12-day free trial is over and you are officially a customer with us at FS Roundup. Take that time on the free trial to go utilize the waiver wire tool, which is saving people's teams in 2025. We've had so much positive feedback because it really makes a freaking difference. We've also added comparison tool features to the site as well. Tons of great developments happening on FS Roundup. It's the greatest fantasy site you could ever imagine with the greatest waiver wire tool you could ever imagine. And I will break down your team for you whenever you are officially a customer at fsroundup.com.
This is Ted. Look at him. Ted desperately needs to pick up a new running back, or his fantasy team is toast. For the third year in a row. And losing his season again means one thing.
Oh, no.
Don't be Ted. Use Fantasy Football Roundup to automate your waiver pickups and rest easy this season. Huh. Look at him.
Now, dropping down to our next tier right here, I've got Malik Nabers at 15 and Tetairoa McMillan is at 16. Listen, Malik Nabers had to drop, and I get it. It's really disappointing. I'm disappointed to have to do this, but it just is the reality of life. This guy with Russell Wilson has very minimal upside. And I said this heading into last week. I would be shocked if Russell Wilson did half of what he did in week 2. And he didn't, of course, because Russell Wilson sucks, and he's taking on another good defense versus the Chargers. There's not much saving grace in this matchup right here. The only reason Malik Nabers is top 15 is because he's that good. And I believe that they will force feed him the ball somehow because what they did last week against the Chiefs, that was unacceptable. So I think Malik Nabers, yes, has lower upside because of Russell Wilson, but at the same time, man, this guy is such a dog, and I can't rank him outside of top 15 for now. Tetairoa McMillan at 16 at the New England Patriots this week. Listen, the reality with this guy is even in a game where they just won 30-0, he's still their number one. And it's even more so the case because Xavier Legette isn't even playing right now. So they have Hunter Henry outside of Tetairoa McMillan, and cross your fingers on David Moore. I mean, this guy is so important to this offense. He is basically their Drake London in this offense. And Tetairoa McMillan has actually done really well. So against the New England Patriots defense, which is very susceptible to the pass, I might add, I think Tetairoa McMillan can have a big game in this one. Garrett Wilson's at 17, and Deebo Samuel is at 18. Garrett Wilson had to move up. And listen, I have been against Garrett Wilson for the majority of this season, and it's not because I don't like the player. This guy is an excellent player. That's why he's making it to 17. And I don't know if it's going to be Justin Fields this week or Tyrod Taylor again, but the reality is either one of them if they are good enough to get him the ball, he will make stuff happen against the Dolphins defense. I mean, this defense is already atrocious right here, and Garrett Wilson last week against the Bucs defense was magic. That's because Garrett Wilson's an elite player. So for that reason, I think that whatever quarterback you throw at him, he will be able to execute against the Dolphins. And then Deebo Samuel to round up this tier at 18. He had to move down because without Jaden Daniels, he was not what I thought he could be. I spent all week saying that I think Deebo Samuel is going to be a really good play regardless of if Jaden plays or not. I was very wrong about that because Jaden Daniels didn't play and Deebo was not involved whatsoever. I mean, this guy realistically just didn't have the bust-proof quality that I thought he would have because of Cliff Kingsbury's scheme. He just wasn't as important. So I've got to move him down. I don't know if Jaden Daniels is playing yet, but I guarantee you if Jaden does play, I want him way higher than this because Atlanta's defense is one you could absolutely take advantage of. And we are also missing Terry McLaurin in all likelihood, so keep that in mind with Deebo Samuel this week. And by the way, go post a start-sit poll with Deebo Samuel on FS Roundup as well. Now, jumping down to our next tier, I've got Keenan Allen at 19 and Ja'Marr Chase lands at 20. A lot of you probably wondering, is he seriously going to leave him off this list? No, he's not left off the list. Keenan Allen, though, I do prefer him over Ja'Marr Chase at the New York Giants. Again, this matchup is cake. Like, it's not a matchup issue. The only problem that could be here is game script. Because if they start beating the crap out of the Giants, they're just not going to need to throw the ball that much. But at the same time, man, Keenan Allen is everything for Justin Herbert. And I'm not saying that because he's the only good receiver. I'm saying that because Justin Herbert, in times of crisis, he goes to Keenan Allen. And that's why Ladd McConkey is lower than Keenan on my rankings moving forward, basically. Ladd McConkey at this point, I don't trust him as much as Keenan because Keenan is still a dog and he's absolutely the most trusted receiver for Justin Herbert. And it's an offense that's firing on all cylinders right now. Ja'Marr Chase at 20. Listen, it's a bummer, man. And realistically, guys, I'll be honest here. If he wasn't playing the Denver Broncos, he would be higher because I am not buying all of the smoke and all of the overreaction about the Bengals being completely inept in fantasy for the rest of the year. They're not going to play many more defenses like the Minnesota Vikings. Now, ironically, they're playing the Broncos, which is every bit as good, if not better than the Vikings defense, so it will be another tough game for Ja'Marr. But that being said, you cannot ignore the talent. This guy is super talented. All he needs is a wide receiver screen, and he could house one any day. So there's just no realistic way he's finding his way outside the top 30 or even the top 25 realistically because this guy is so talented. But you throw in that matchup versus Pat Surtain as well, it's not going to be the greatest day for Ja'Marr Chase. Ricky Pearsall is at 21, and Quentin Johnston is at 22, makes his debut inside the top 30. And Ricky Pearsall was a dog last week. I mean, this guy didn't have Jauan Jennings on his back, so that definitely makes things easier. But what I will say about Ricky is that this guy actually looks like a legitimate number one, even when Jauan Jennings gets back. And we may have Brock Purdy back in this week. A lot of reports would indicate that we do, and Mac Jones is also injured. Another injury added onto this team that cannot get out of their own way when it comes to injuries, man. It's sad, but Ricky Pearsall versus the Jaguars, that's a matchup you obviously want. So monitor Jauan Jennings this week. If Jennings doesn't play, he's higher, but I'm assuming Jennings does play this week, FYI. And if Brock Purdy is back, I would also put him up a little bit higher as well. And Quentin Johnston's at 22 at the New York Giants. Again, that same matchup. And I said this in week one, and it was met with a lot of people that doubted this one. And I don't blame you, but this guy is a legitimate breakout this year. It's happening before our eyes. I mean, this guy is executing on every deep target, and he's still getting targets over the middle of the field. Down the field, he is their threat, and it's not Ladd McConkey anymore. Quentin Johnston, at this point, I have got him ranked over Ladd McConkey. I don't know if it's a season-long thing. Haven't decided on that yet. But as we sit here right now, this guy is better in fantasy than Ladd McConkey. It's tough to cope with, but you've got to swallow this one. Brian Thomas Jr. is at 23 to round out this tier, and he's going to San Francisco to take on the 49ers. Listen, Brian Thomas Jr. is definitely not a must start. I would say that he's still a buy low, though, because last week I saw signs of improvement. This guy caught a huge pass for the Jags in a very key spot to help them win the game versus the Texans. Now, he's still not producing enough. This is why he's not a must start, but the workload is there. It's a matter of time before this guy breaks out. It could be this week against the 49ers, but based on how well they've played on minimal personnel, and they just lost Joey Bosa, which is a huge loss, I still think that Brian Thomas Jr. is not the best play yet, but I have got a very close eye on this one. And a lot of times the reality is people will be playing Brian Thomas Jr. because he was such a high draft capital guy. Brian Thomas Jr. at 23. Now dropping down to our next tier, I've got Tyreek Hill at 24 and Ladd McConkey at 25. Yes, I got to be honest, I would play Tyreek Hill over Ladd McConkey. I know it's a huge shock to a lot of people. And listen, I was clearly wrong about having Tyreek Hill outside my top 30 last week. I've definitely put myself in a position where I boxed myself in a corner a little bit because I have underrated Tyreek Hill so bad. And listen, through the first 3 weeks, he's not been great, but he's not been as bad as I thought he would be. He's taking on the Jets this week. In theory, it's a winning matchup. I think Tyreek Hill could have a big game, but I will also add this. Jalen Waddle's not far outside of Tyreek Hill as far as production and my rankings go because he has been basically as involved. Tyreek is the better player still. I will give him that. And that's why he's higher than Jalen Waddle at 24 in a good matchup versus the Jets. And then Ladd McConkey at 25. Again, not all of these receivers in Los Angeles are going to finish inside the top 30. That's one thing that's very important to note right now before I get into the analysis. One of them will disappoint you inside the top 30. But I've got them all here because this offense and this passing game is thriving so much right now. I can't not put them all inside the top 30. Honestly, that's how I feel. But the reality is this. Ladd McConkey, the reason he's still inside the top 25 is because if you look at FS Roundup and what his usage is, he's still being used as basically their wide receiver one. Snap counts and routes run, those are important bottom line metrics for wide receivers, and he's still basically leading in it every single week. So Ladd McConkey, I still have him as a top 25 guy because I view it as a matter of time before this guy gets you a 20-point game and he gets in the end zone. Michael Pittman Jr. is at 26, and Jakobi Meyers is at 27 to round out this tier. And Michael Pittman Jr., listen, I've come to the conclusion this week that if Daniel Jones does it again versus the Rams defense, this is real. And it's the Sam Darnold situation from last year in Minnesota, and we have to buy in. And I think that this ranking right here indicates my concern with that because the Rams defense, they got obliterated last week with the Eagles. But I think that the Rams will win this game. And again, I will be happy to be proven wrong. If the Colts come out here and play a really good offensive performance, I am done doubting them. But Michael Pittman clearly is the wide receiver one, and he has done really well. And if he can get the same level of success against the Rams that A.J. Brown did, then he's way underranked. But I've got him here at 26 for now because as of the time of this filming, before week 4, I am still a Daniel Jones doubter. And at 27 to round out the tier, it's Jakobi Meyers versus the Chicago Bears. Listen, the Chicago Bears just destroyed the Dallas Cowboys, but a lot of that had to do with CeeDee Lamb leaving the game. I think their defense still is very beatable, particularly on the back end, because they've got a lot of injuries. I think Jakobi Meyers, based on the way Geno's playing, will be a really good fantasy player this week. This could be a very big underranking, and of course, Trey Tucker took tons of work from Jakobi Meyers last week. That's not a normal thing. It won't always happen. Jakobi Meyers is still a very, very solid PPR play. And I think in general, in half PPR as well, he'll continue to see around 10 targets per game. And this ranking may be too low. Now, dropping down to our last year, I've got Jauan Jennings at 28 and Jameson Williams is at 29. With Jauan Jennings, he's taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars. And again, I'm assuming he'll play. Apparently, he was almost going to go last week. That was a report that I read. Who knows how true it is? But the guy did actually have a limited practice when I said that he hadn't practiced at all last week. I think he probably will play in this game, which will definitely keep him inside the top 30 because, listen, he has been involved. And they just have no choice. I mean, they've got Christian McCaffrey, they've got Ricky Pearsall, and they've got Jauan Jennings if he plays. He will be involved, and if it's Brock Purdy, I want in on the Jacksonville matchup. And then Jameson Williams at 29 versus the Cleveland Browns. What we saw against the Baltimore Ravens on Monday night is classic Jameson Williams. This guy came out of the gate swinging right in that first drive. He had 2 catches, didn't touch the ball again. That's the danger of Jameson Williams. He will give you 2 catches for 100 yards one week and then 2 catches for 43 yards the next week. Jameson just isn't consistently involved enough to see a much higher ranking than this. But again, just based on how explosive he is and how explosive the Detroit offense looks that I was so wrong about heading into the season, I've got to keep J-Mo inside the top 30. And Matthew Golden makes his debut at number 30 here at the Dallas Cowboys. Now, I'll tell you this. Romeo Doubs is right behind him at 31. Same tier. This guy is definitely just as likely to finish inside the top 30 as Matthew Golden is. But what I will say, and the reason why I've got Matthew Golden here, is because he did lead the team in targets in week 3 versus the Cleveland Browns. And he had 4 catches for 52 yards. I think if we can build on that, we can have an effective week. Because this week he's playing the Dallas Cowboys, and the reality is you want one of those wide receivers because one of them will do good. I'm going to put my money on Matthew Golden this week. So let me know what you think of the rankings in the comments below. And if you want to see the top buy low candidates before week 4 fantasy football, click on this video right here.